Tom, we had a very interesting conversation a few weeks ago. I wish we recorded that one because we got into some really geeky detail, but I just think there was a lot of very interesting points and were very topical around some of the previous projects you were showing me as we were catching up. And there was three things that stood out, which is why I've got you here today to share a little bit more about what Thomas Alexander Architects are up to. And the first one was the creativity and design. I think there's some brilliant concepts coming out and really smart use of space, some of them very tight spaces to give a really attractive looking facade and building structure, and also the ways of getting light into the spaces you'd created. And I think the most important thing, which frankly your peers, the developers are going to be very interested in, is the way that you created value from some of the challenges that were there as well. So if it's all right, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit with us, and so I can share with everyone else some of the insights you gave to me a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it sounds good, and looking forward to the opportunity to chatting you through it again and showing off a couple of our projects. So shall I just dive straight in?
Yeah, go for it.
Good stuff. Cool. So the first project I'm going to talk through is it's actually our first completed development, which is Heath Road in Thornton Heath. We started this project back in 2015, and it completed 3 years ago. It was a very challenging site, and we were approached by the developer for our second project with him. There'd been a couple of pre-apps before on a more standardized housing approach with more normal back gardens, and they'd applied for 4 houses back there on a pre-app prior to purchase, and the pre-app response was poor because of how highly constrained the site is. I think this image here really demonstrates exactly how constrained that site is. So the client bought the site with the impression that he'd get a flat building at the front of the site. So just to talk you through and over in the areas of the site itself, it's fronting Heath Road here. It was an existing funeral director's building with some garages to the rear, which got a couple of montages here just demonstrating the quality of the site and actually how, or lack of, and how constrained it is there. So as I said, the client bought the site believing that he'd be able to get 4 or 5 flats on it, and that the area to the rear was just too constrained to achieve anything in terms of housing. We initially approached the scheme at pre-app, and we came up with the idea of courtyard houses to tackle the constraints of the site. And I'll just show you the landscape plan here because I think it best demonstrates actually what we were working with. So this building here is housing association building with windows here, which you would have seen from the first image. This is all private amenity here, here, and here. And then these are a row of houses with private amenity here also. So in terms of getting usable amenity to the proposed dwellings and also protecting what was happening around, we came up with these courtyard houses, which allowed the properties to have inward facing aspect here and here, but it also used the building to block any views into that amenity. So we're able to get the design officer on board early on in the process during the pre-app. They really liked the approach, and so we didn't really change the scheme too much, a little bit in terms of materiality, but that was about it. So the finished article, so this is actually a couple of 3Ds just showing you how those forms worked. And what we did with the roof form here was we shaped it around the context. So if I flick to the images, the roof actually drops down where there's any windows of the neighboring properties. So here we're able to demonstrate in terms of daylight and sunlight that there was no impact on those windows to the proposal, and all the properties were set over 1.5 stories with accommodation in the roof line. So quite striking spaces inside, both at the upper floors and obviously at the ground floor with those courtyard spaces. And here's the finished product. So our concept, if we're talking poetically, was because it was quite an industrial site, we chose to to combine metal and brickwork, so that it was kind of a relationship between industrial finish and a masonry finish, so a more traditional finish. And then the finished product, as you can see here, is quite striking in terms of the facade, but also the internal spaces, which allow this sort of inside-outside living arrangement with the courtyard.
Oh, fantastic! I love it.
And so, yeah, as I said, they've been on the market and sold over the last few years, and we're on to other projects with this client now. So we're moving forward with him on other projects, which yeah, it's great.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.